Good evening to all, and welcome to Daybreak News with the Guyanese Critic, where I will be having an exclusive interview with Vice President Dr. Barrett JAGDEO on current affairs and specifically the liberalization, what it means for the telecommunications sector, and the climate, the political climate with the government and the opposition presently. Thank you for having me here, Dr. JAGDEO.
You're welcome.
We've heard, Guyanese have heard a lot about a lot of things every time election comes. And then, like for instance, we heard about oil and it will change everything. And in 2015, we heard about the PPP's corruption and everything else, and what the government coming in, the APNU, AFC coalition would have done. And it seems that what is promised, all the pomp and ceremony is lost when individuals come into government, and it becomes doom and gloom for the citizens. I've heard about this telecommunication liberalization. You had the opposition trying to jump on the bandwagon to say, well, they did most of the work, but they weren't able to complete it. I think, from what I've been hearing, it's supposed to be interesting for the Guyanese. Telecommunication, affordable. Places like Essequibo, who doesn't have it, is going to be getting it now. But what does it really mean? Telecommunication liberalization for Guyanese, and what did the PPP do in such a short period of time to ensure that Guyanese are now getting this?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely correct that often when we deal with policy making, we have pretty short memories, or we do not go into great detail about the technical issues surrounding policies and their objective. And much of the debate around policy takes place in a politicized environment, so you never get a chance to expound on these issues in great detail in a public debate, say for example in the National Assembly. I've never been able to make a purely technical presentation on a budget debate, because from the moment you stand up, the heckling and the attempt to disrupt really detracts you from making a purely technical submission. You have to deal with politically responding to the heckling, etc. So I'm hoping that we would spend a bit more time now on debating justifications and taking the debate to another level, talking more about policy making and how it impacts on our people. And this is why we did, to some extent, some of the discussions surrounding the Payara project. We explained what we did, what were the new features of the licenses that we issued and the environmental permit, how they radically depart from those done by APNU in the LITSA project, and we laid out the agenda for what we intend to work on in the oil and gas sector, and how we intend to bring more value to Guyana. So we said, here, over the next 6 months, here are the things we're working on. A model agreement, a petroleum commission, the reform of the Natural Resources Fund. We're working on local content. We're working on a gas to energy project, laying out the agenda and showing how each of these reforms will bring benefits to people. So similarly, I want to take that discussion into the question you asked me just now about the liberalization of telecommunication and the benefits for people. But to understand the context, you have to go back to a distant period in our history. In 1990, we had a state-owned telecommunication company. And that company was sold without any tender to ATN, no public tender. 80% of it was sold to ATN for $16 million. The company had $5 million in the bank account. And in the first couple of years of operation of the telecom company, they made back the money that they paid for the 80% shares. The government retained 20%. A transaction that was not transparent. The company was also guaranteed a rate of return on 15% on assets, a 6% advisory fee on gross revenue. Whether they offered any advice or not, 6% of gross revenue. Nothing has been seen in the entire world that is close to that. That's not industry standard at all. And they were given a monopoly for 20 years, and then with the right to renew it for another 20 years, 40 years monopoly. So, and this was mainly over international telephony and landlines. So that is the environment we've had to deal with. The PPP in its term in office, the 20-odd years. We argued that a liberalized telecommunication environment is one that promotes innovation, it promotes competition, promotes growth, it allows the country to get all of the services necessary, like a developed world environment, to increase productivity among people in the individual level and within their companies. And it allows governments and others to extend services. So we established very early we wanted a liberalized environment. If you listen to me in 2006, I advocated for this. But we were constantly stuck with this monopoly. And so we then looked around and we said, GT&T did not have a monopoly on cell services, because at that time, 1990, the technology was not developed. You didn't have many cell phones around at that time. So we brought in Digicel. We gave Digicel to come in on the cell services, but they couldn't compete on other types of services. And eventually, over the years, we allowed other ISPs to come in and deal with the internet and data providers, etc., because those were not covered by the monopoly. But we started working on legislation since before I left office in 2011. We had the drafts ready, and it was the same legislation that went to the National Assembly in 2014. And we had a select committee on which Irfan Ali was a member. Carl Greenidge was there. You had Mansour Nadir in it. You had several Prime Minister Samuel Hines at that time. And then it all got stalled. But so if you look at the legislation that we had drafted in 2014, and you look at the one that APNU passed in 2016, there's very little difference. You can get the two drafts and compare them. So this work started a long time back, and APNU passed the law in 2016, and we're happy for that. We supported it in 2016 because we believe in liberalization. So from 2016 to 2020, all the minister had to do was to prepare the grounds. So first of all, prepare the regulations, which we did since we came in, try to populate the new licenses, and then bring the order into effect, sign the order to bring the legislation into effect, this new law. What she did was to sign the order to bring elements of the legislation in place, but in 2019 had a secret negotiation because we did not know about it. A few days before the no confidence vote expired, the time, allowable time, the 3 months, and expired, to deal with and signed an MOU which was talking about tax matters and spectrum issues, etc. So it seems as though APNU had a change of mind from 2016 to 2020 about liberalization. And there are many reasons out there. I have various explanations. I don't want to prefer now one of those explanations, but it had to deal with politics and a whole range of stuff. So they never did it, what we did in a few weeks' time. So since we came into office, we studied the environment.
Are you saying that the then government did not have the willingness to go through with liberalization?
Although they passed the law in 2016, with the law that we had worked on since 2011 or so, they passed it with our support. And we had given full support for liberalization. They would not have had any issue with
One
us.
of the former ministers, I think the Minister of Telecommunication, Cathy Hughes, recently said they had done 95% of the work.
But that is what I'm just telling you. The law that they passed was effectively the same law that we presented to the Select Committee in 2014. The law is 90% of the work. And they passed the same law that we presented in 2014. So, but Cathy Hughes doesn't have great reputation for being truthful. You recall outside the convention center when Critic Nascimento had to call her out for blatantly lying. She lied in the face of everyone in the country knowing differently. And it's a consistent pattern that we've observed with her. But I think they're smarting from, she had 4 years to do what we did in a few weeks when the legislation was passed in 2016. There was nothing else to do except to sign an order bringing the legislation into force and doing what we did, like prepare the licenses and stuff like that.
That's a done deal now.
So that is all history. And if they support it, I'm happy about it. Because from what you said, they're saying they support it now. But they just were totally incompetent or compromised. Either one of the two. And so what we did, so now that the new law is in force, we have a liberalized environment.
What does that mean in layman terms
Now,
for Guyanese?
it means that competition, greater competition across all the platforms. On international telephony, you can have it on landlines, you can have it on data, you can have it on voice. So greater competition. Secondly, it means that you can have more entrance into the field. So already we have had the companies, so Digicel did not get the license for everything did not get a license for everything. They only got a license for their service that they were authorized to do prior to the liberalization. They now have to apply for the other permits. Similarly, e-networks. GT&T got their license for everything that they were licensed for before, and they can apply for new areas if they wish. And then we've already had a new application, and we expect more applications from other people to come in various sectors, some with a full-fledged telecommunication company and others with part services. So we've already seen in a few days that Digicel said we want to bring in a new subsea cable. You may have 5 other persons who want to bring in subsea cables, and they will now have the permission to do so. What benefit does this bring to the country? It brings greater bandwidth now and cheaper bandwidth. I recall the early days of GT&T where 1 meg of bandwidth used to cost nearly $3,000. Now it's down to $40. Now it's down to $40. In the early days it was $3,000 and now it's down to $40. So the more bandwidth you have, the more subsea cable, the more redundancy you have, the greater the lower the price for bandwidth, and the greater the services you can deliver on this this platform now with more bandwidth. So you've heard GT&T now saying themselves, we want to move to 5G services. Now 5G means basically you're on your cell phone, your data, you would have broader, there's on cellular services, broader bandwidth and faster download speed. So as much as 10 gigabits per second. So you can then use your phone to do anything. You can then, not just the phone, but the speed is so great that you can migrate that speed to other services. So if you have a laptop in the past, right, and you have a Wi-Fi at home through an ISP, you don't need an ISP anymore. On your laptop or your tablet or any of your other smart devices, the speed of the size of this download speed and the size of the bandwidth on your cellular provider, whoever your cellular provider, Digicel, eNetworks, or GT&T would be enough for you to connect with them with your computer or with your laptop without going through an individual hotspot in your home, bringing in a fiber cable or connecting, through a modem or anything like that. You can connect directly at massive download speed to all your devices to your cellular provider. That's the 5G services would allow you to do that. It means you can move into greater things. You have talked about Internet of Things, linking all your smart devices with your cell services. So it sets up room for a whole range of next generation services. Cloud computing. Once you have good bandwidth and an extensive speed and more people, you can reach out greater because there's a portability of your number now. You can have a number. Even people in far-flung parts of the country now, they would not need an ISP. So if you're in the hinterland, you don't need an ISP now, like to give you through a VSAT or something to connect to the internet and make a call. You can then use your cell services. So cloud computing, which means all your data could be uploaded, etc., because you have fast speed and your apps and stuff like that, any part of the world. So what I'm saying is that this platform, the liberalization, allows greater competition, greater for price on bandwidth, allows us to move to next generation services and will be good for economy or people, etc. Now you know how crucial bandwidth will be. So, for example, we're moving to the learning channel now. We have several new learning channels. With teleconferencing now, everyone would be teleconferencing through the school, through using Zoom, whatever else. That requires good bandwidth. It requires good services. You need those badly now. So this here would allow a move to enhancing those sorts of services. And many people are worried about landline access. GT&T didn't provide enough. In the legislation, all the telecommunication companies will have to contribute to a universal access fund, and that money would be used to subsidize extending telecommunication services to remote areas, because everybody like to group around areas where you have the bulk of the population. So remote areas are underserved, and so they often argue it's uneconomic, but the universal access fund that they have to contribute to through the new legislation would ensure that everyone benefits from these services. So overall, it's an important thing. It's a great day for the country. I've personally worked on this as president, then lobbied for it a long time when we were in opposition, and now we managed to get it done.
Dr. JAGDEO, all you have detailed there is nothing short than amazing. It's interesting, it's intriguing to know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. One thing I have to ask as it relates to what you're saying there has never been a telecommunication company or a public utility company that has given Guyanese what they told them they would give them. Never in the history of Guyana. Will there be now again, we have
Oversight.
GT&T. Will there be oversight coming? Because we got other companies coming in. We don't know who's coming in. Will there be oversight bodies that are going to ensure that Guyanese get what they pay for in terms of megabyte, whatever the company says they will deliver to them? And because you have the PUC, the Public Utility Company, and when you go to them, I can tell you this, people at the Public Utility Company, tell people, talk to Critic. Why?
Yes.
That is most likely because
I understand. I personally have a big issue with it. On a daily basis, my WhatsApp calls drop 20 times. When I make calls on a daily basis, I can't get it. I'm totally frustrated sometimes. And if you're paying for a service, you have to get the service. Now, the Public Utilities Commission has an enhanced role in the liberalized environment. But anti-competitive methods are removed through the liberalization tool. So interconnect, which companies could have used to try to stymie their competitors, but the interconnection is crucial to a seamless flow of data and calls, etc., and crucial to quality of service, has suffered because companies sought to use that as a competitive tool. So that now is provided for by legislation. So the Public Utilities Commission has a role to ensure quality of service and has a role to ensure that people are getting fair value for money. So any increase in rates would have to be done by the PUC. But we've built in this legislation for the next year, people can drop rates without the PUC approval. Right? So the thing is that so we have to ensure that the Public Utilities Commission is strengthened. Now, the law requires the companies to pay for the Public Utilities Commission to be properly staffed and to look out for our interests. Not just your interests as an individual or Critic as an advocate, but me as a consumer, the JAGDEO as a consumer of telecommunication services, who is very unhappy too. I am very unhappy many times with the quality of service. And when you pay for a particular bandwidth, you should be getting that bandwidth. But what people do is they put 50 persons on the network on that area where you're drawing the bandwidth from. So if you're paying for 25 megs, then you come down to 2. Because if all of them are using simultaneously. So a lot of those issues, standard issues, quality issues, have to be regulated and have to be assessed by the Public Utilities Commission, but it requires greater level of understanding and services and skills in the Public Utilities Commission too, and we'd have to strengthen those. I'm just speaking about the environment for liberalization now and how it opens up our country to new investment, and we would not be like technologically left behind the developed world. We want to be at the cutting edge of technology.
How do you see, or how long do you think that Guyanese, it will take Guyanese to be at a technologically advanced stage? Our calls are not dropping, competitive rates, a PUC that when you make a complaint, they can deliver on ensuring that the customers are represented well. What kind of time period can Guyanese expect this to be delivered on?
So Critic, we've liberalized, but there's a whole deal of technical work to be done now to get to a system that functions in the way it should function. And the Public Utilities Commission is really to protect the public. So work has to be done there immediately. Within the telecommunication agency, we have to work to improve the use of the spectrum. The spectrum is in trouble now. People are squatting on the spectrum, including some of these companies. They have to be regularized and they have to pay for the spectrum, which is a valuable resource to the country, and the money has to come to the treasury. Thirdly, there are a whole range of tax-related issues, particularly with UT&T, that have to be settled, and we have to work out a way going forward. Then there will be a demand for new spectrum to make sure that the 5G services work, LTE work. So a lot of work has to be done to ensure that what we are aspiring to, that we achieve it, which is a telecommunication sector that supports growth and development and productivity, enhanced productivity, and provides the best personalized service to our people, good customer service. So a lot of work needs to be done now. It's not, you can't sign a law into place and think that everything else will fall into, all the pieces will fall into place. So that's being driven. I can assure you that's on our agenda, the reform of these agencies, making sure that we get properly skilled people to man these agencies, Guyanese who are competent and can look out for interests. And so I can't say to you, tomorrow you're gonna immediately see that there'll be a radical change of attitude in the Public Utilities Commission, etc. Half of the time, the people are not even cognizant of their own role. They underestimate the powers of the legislation to protect consumers. And therefore, they're very dismissive of complaints, etc., when their core job should be really tackling people's complaints.
Why I ask that question, Dr. JAGDEO? This has been a long lost effort process. We talk about what happened in 1990, what the PPP was working to do, the legislation that was made, the laws that were enacted in Parliament by the previous administration. I just want to make sure what we're talking about doesn't last the next 20 years.
No, definitely.
Do we have some time frame? Because every project has...
Well, let me give you, the aggressive timelines we're working on. That you will start seeing benefits by Today, Digicel put as news, they have advertisement in the paper, and the rates for international telephony, they dropped them significantly today. We've already had applications from new entrants. Already, Digicel is committed to a new subsea cable, GT&T to 5G services. Already you're seeing the benefits of liberalization. Those are services. So liberalization brings some immediate benefits, and there are some that it will take a little bit longer to achieve. But in terms of consumer protection, etc., that's why the law now, we have a modern Telecommunication Act replacing the old one, a modern act. The act allows the growth of the sector but protects consumers too. And so you have the legislative underpinning to give the agencies that are dedicated to this task the tools to work with. And therefore, I can say to you, we're not looking at years. We're looking at, or 5 years or 20 years. We're looking to get up to that level of consumer protection in the shortest possible time. Months, a year, etc. That's what I'm talking about.
One of my other concerns, Dr. JAGDEO, I spoke to a gentleman, the CEO for Fly Jamaica. Recently, somebody, I was going to start back, Fly Jamaica. It was a new airline. I think it's BWIA, I can't remember if it's Fly Jamaica or BWI, but I met the guy, airline pilot, and he was coming back to invest in Guyana. As a result of politics being played in the aviation sector, his efforts to get his airline off of the ground were stymied.
Which is this?
I think was Guyana Airways, sorry. Guyana Airways was coming back. There was an individual, I met him, sorry. So he was trying to bring back Guyana Airways. He bought the name and was reenacting the company and so on. And because of politics, the Aviation Authority was not, because he sat there basically and told me in detail, because of politics.
I think I met the gentleman,
yes,
and he complained to me about how he was given the royal runaround. This was just about after the government changed that he came back.
Yes.
And he had a great intention. He made a lot of applications, and he was treated unfairly.
How do we ensure that the PPP administration does not look from people from a political perspective?
Yes, but this guy is Afro-Guyanese, and he was treated badly by APNU. I don't think it had to do with race. It's just, there was some of
politics.
That.
I didn't say race, politics.
Or
politics.
Incompetence or so. I don't know if they saw him as being pro-PPP, but my point is that if Guyanese want to come back and invest their money, we should be even more welcoming. If we're welcoming people, foreigners to come and invest here, why shouldn't we be even more welcoming of our own people? I don't give a damn about your politics. If you have a good project and you come here to invest, or you're Guyanese and you want to invest, you will get the full help of the PPP government. Once it's a project that creates jobs for people and wealth for you and the country.
So the PPP is ready to do business with anybody, even somebody
anybody
that seems to be pro.
No, we don't care too much. Some of the people who flourished, who came from nothing and flourished under the PPP in the years in office. I don't want to mention their names now, but they were the biggest critics of the People's Progressive Party. I can list 15 of them who made all of their money move from penury or from very modest means to becoming wealthy, made their money under the PPP. And there were some of our fiercest critics. And many of them supported APNU AFC in the last government. But that did not prevent us from helping them, nor helping anybody now who has a good project. So this guy came in and I met with him, and this was even in opposition. He came to see me and he told me about his project, and it's very unfortunate because he had an enormous amount of experience in aviation. The problem, however, is that we will not tell a civil aviation who to approve a license for and not, and who to not to disapprove a license for.
But does the civil aviation choose that at their whims and fancies?
But the civil aviation, what we will do if you're treated unfairly by the civil aviation, and they bring extraneous reasoning into the processing of your license, then we will intervene. But you will have to appreciate that if politicians want to approve which aircraft can fly into Guyana or not, and the next time and you say give Critic the license and the plane falls out the sky, then you know who is going to get the blame. That's a technical matter, and there are some technical issues that politicians should not mess with. They should make sure that the planes are properly licensed, maintenance schedule, etc. Or technical people must go through the full detail. But if we feel you're discriminated against in the processing of a license, then we will intervene on the discrimination. But you understand, and I'm sure you appreciate, that no politician should get involved in telling a man brings a plane that is limping along, and you tell the man from civil aviation, give him a license.
I respect that. There is another problem that has been affecting the business community, and as we spoke about the aviation, that issue. The Food and Drug Department has been acting in a manner that seems to fear and favor some. It has created a lot of discomfort for the business community.
I agree absolutely with you on that. A slew of businessmen came to see me. And I know the president is very concerned about this because he mentioned this to me several times, and even recently, because he's been, meeting with lots of business people. So people will come and show me that in the same sector, they're bringing in soap or some nonsense, right? And one man gets the permit and another one doesn't get the permit. Or they're asking them for unreasonably to present information that they are not asking other companies to do. So there was a time, for example, we had the same issue in Trinidad and Tobago, I recall that. And they wanted powdered milk coming in from Barbados and other parts of the Caribbean to bring a whole set of certificates, and they wanted to visit the factories from Trinidad as part of the CSME. So we asked, do you visit the factories in New Zealand or Australia when the powdered milk comes from these places? The answer is no, but they put more of a regulatory hurdle on for local issues than foreign products have. But this is a department that must be fair. It must protect consumers, because you can't be bringing in the Diet Coke that is expiring a week later, and a lot of people come in and bring in food stuff that they get cheap because the expiration date is very short. And also if it's expiring, say, in November, the people abroad will sell it for cheap. And then they bring it in here, and then it gets passed and it's on all the shelves, and we're using expired products because they have an in with the food and drug people or not, or the food and drug is partial. Now, I don't care who you are, whether you support the PPP or APNU or whatever. If you have expired, you're selling expired stuff on your shelves, you have to, the food and drug needs to come, seize the stuff and shut it down. You can't sell expired goods to Guyanese consumers. You wouldn't buy that, you wouldn't feed your family that, so you shouldn't sell it. And so this is a fairness in application.
How does the PPP administration intend to ensure that there's fairness coming out from the food and drug department?
Well, you complain to us. You come and complain to us, and it could be a various mechanism. You can go to the Go Invest and complain. You can go to the Consumer Bureau and complain there, or you can write the president and copy it to me or something like that, where you're treated unfairly. Don't come for me to go and approve your regulation or your stuff, right? You understand what I'm saying? I'm not, before next week I start getting everybody who was there complaining on the wharf.
Dr. JAGDEO, what has been going on at the Food and Drug Department, there's one name that's been coming up all the time, and the acts of discrimination against some companies are deliberate. I have investigated myself. That's a matter of fact.
That has no place in our liberalized environment. We have to treat Guyanese fairly and people who come there. So if there are acts of discrimination, you let us know. Really? And we'll deal with these. But not to go through every week I get this much application for routine processing of powdered milk or when the juice is held up, right?
I think you said Go Invest and a number of different agencies can deal with that. I want to touch on two more points that are affecting Guyanese. After the Henry boys' death, very unfortunate situation, and another family, these young men were all friends. There has been quite a bit of instability in Region 5. And it's reached a stage. One time I received a call where I had to call high-ranking police officials to tell them go and get these people out of the bush. People were in, like, I think we're in the bush.
Yes.
People walking through. People are in fear. What plan does the PPP have? Other than the economy, it's great. I see things are trickling down. I like what I'm hearing. I'm going to make sure I keep you guys foot to the fire to ensure that it is delivered to the people. But one of our major problems is when you get, how do you secure and keep what you have? When and how do Guyanese expect to get security out of this administration?
Sure. No, it's important, and we're not averse to fair criticism, because I think in a democracy, no government can be oblivious to when they go wrong to fair criticism. And so we welcome you and anyone else, for that matter, criticizing the government when you believe that we are not acting in a fair manner, or we are not acting with a sense of urgency on an urgent issue, like in this case. So what we have now is a complex environment. We've had it all along. So on the law and order side, West Coast Bobby, Harish, and the Henry boys and stuff like that, we made it clear that this is a horrific crime, and we want to find who did the crime in these 3 murders. We went a step further, not just because we wanted to add confidence to the process, to bring in some of the best specialists with equipment that they use, hopefully to get to the bottom of this, the murders. Now, every single Guyanese should want that. But what we have in West Coast Berbice was a situation where APNU, just losing the elections after trying to polarize the country for 5 months, illegally to stay in power for 5 months, Harman staging a coup to become opposition leader within the PNC, they felt that the way to put the government under pressure, either to talk to them or to somehow overlook the wrongdoings of the last 5 years, to create a pressure point. They don't care about ordinary people who are being harmed. 93 persons so far we have who have lost property or who have been harmed. We made a list of it because the state will compensate them. We've made it clear that we will compensate them, people who lost things or who were harmed, because the state was unable to protect them. And so that will happen. So they don't care a damn about those people. They don't care about how much lives this disrupted, the image of the country. Harman and the other gang, they wanted a distraction from their illegalities. They believe they can put pressure. So what was already a horrific crime, they went and instigated a protest. And some of the biggest in Region 5, some of the worst activists are from that region, Carl Joseph and the others. Look, that region, although the PPP won it the last in 2015, they never been able to function because of the disruptive behavior of the councillors. The only region that never functioned, and they couldn't hold meetings, and the REO spent up all the money. We just saw he spent $200 million on a farm that yield some $6 million, the 1 point something million dollars of produce. That is what happened in that region. So they will continue trying to instigate these youngsters to block the roads, etc. So this becomes a law and order issue, and then it's seen as political. So the police have to ensure they protect the citizens of this country, the police, and when the army is called, against criminality conducted by anyone.
Has the PPP administration expressed this to the administration of the police force? Because I can tell you, I have been on a number of locations where people have been attacked, damage to the vehicles, damage to property while the police stood there.
That is acceptable.
Not reports, Mr.
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
I'm
not disputing you. I'm not disputing you. And often, so this is akin to a situation. I've seen it happening again. Now, from the police perspective, you remember the crime wave when APNU was actively supporting like the gang that took over Buxton, and the damage done to that community, we haven't even recovered from it now. The raping, the burning, the harassment of people, of Buxtonians, because they allowed the criminals to do that. The damage to the reputation of that village, which was seen as one of the most enterprising villages.
Brutal murder of a Buxtonian businessman.
Yes.
Hamilton, remember the Hamilton gas station?
All of that. The people of Guyana, the people of Buxton should judge them harshly for allowing that, because they knew what happened. They knew who was going in and visiting the criminals. They knew that those same criminals were walking around with AK-47 around the village and raping the girls in the village and chasing. You know how many people left the village? They were living in fear, and APNU, PNC caused that. And but every time the police went in, they mobilized a couple of women and children to go in front of the police. And just imagine if the police shoot at the criminals. The criminals would be running down to the back dam, and then this group of civilians will come and block the police. Just imagine if one is killed, what the escalation would be. And we saw a similar thing happening in West Coast Bobbies, where you have some criminal elements there, but I think the APNU already started saying to the police, oh, you're taking instruction from an illegal government, an Indian government. It's not about law and order anymore. You didn't see a single bit of that in the 5 years we're in opposition. We never took the side of the criminal or the person who was perpetrating the illegal act. But this is the tactic, and that's what I believe to some extent makes the police a little bit more reluctant to act in the manner that they would act. They do it immediately. If they come to a PPP stronghold, if that was a PPP stronghold, the police would clear it quickly once it's earlier. But in this case, I think there is that element. They don't want to be caught up in the vortex of politics. Harman goes down there and says the commissioner of police or the chief of staff giving instructions to kill civilians or something like that. The nonsense we hear. So that is where, when they would have acted probably with more resolve or be more resolute, they're worried about the politics, how it will be characterized because of this gang, this criminal gang headed by Harman. So that is what you have playing out here. Notwithstanding all I've said, police and they must prevent illegal activities. And burning people's property or blocking them on the road and beating them up or anything of that sort is illegal in our laws. Now, our laws also provide for peaceful protests. So there should be, the police should protect peaceful protests. And we as a government must protect peaceful protests. We're not against people expressing their desires or their anger if they're angry. But you can't do that and harm other people.
How does the PPP plan to deal with an opposition when they were managing the affairs of this country, attempted to rig an election, now doesn't accept that the government is legitimate, requests meetings while simultaneously try to undermine and create confusion in certain parts of the country? How does this administration deal with that? Because at some point in time, we have to meet or find a solution that will see peace reigning in Guyana.
Yeah, but working through criminal types like Harman and the others, that gang there, and I see many of them in Parliament, they're not interested in peace. They're not interested in stability. They're only interested in protecting their ill-gotten gains, money stolen, large looting of the treasury in the last 5 years, and they're interested in staying out of prison. And they don't mind creating instability to detract the administration's or distract the administration's attention from what they did. So that group you cannot really work with. Our job is to work with people in their villages, to go out, reach out, see that our children all across Guyana, children in every village, whether their parents are PPP or APNU or any other party, that they have the best education, they get help from the government, they can go to school, they have enough to eat. And right across the country, all the kids, these are the children of Guyana. So we have to start with that. We have to make sure that in those villages all across, PPP strongholds and APNU strongholds, people have work. They can work and feed their families, etc. We believe and along that they have good access to health care, as these are the sorts of things that we are doing. And we don't, you notice how everything is raised for them. We're spending about $3 billion a year subsidizing electricity in Linden. And this was through the PPP period too. And if you put $500 million a year for sugar workers, 7,000 of them who've been laid off, $500 million, then suddenly Figueira and the whole APNU camp wants to find out why you're sugar belt versus, but they would never say anything about the 3 billion in Linden. Everything is through ethnic spectrum. We have to look after the people in Linden, and we have to look after the people in the sugar belt too. 7,000 who have been laid off. And we opening up back the sugar industry would create benefits for the whole of Berbice, New Amsterdam included. 25% of the sugar workers are Afro-Ghanese. They don't see that. So that is what we can't be too, you can't work with some of these leaders. Our job is to make sure that we work with the communities. And we have to make sure that they don't continue to mislead people. That is why constantly exposing their wrongdoing. Like a lot of people believe, what we should overlook what took place at GCOM. But if we overlook criminality now, they try to steal an election, the people who are being charged now. If we overlook that, what are we saying? A kid steals 2 mangoes and goes, they sentence him for a month in jail. And these people try to steal an election. They put the country through the trauma that they did. We ended up spending billions of dollars more. And we must overlook that they must now face justice. We cannot allow that to happen. Then we say to our children, it's okay to steal, to be a criminal. And you don't send a message to other would-be stealers of elections. So that is why we have to keep doing those things. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we work to ensure that people get help. Look at the COVID grant. Families want the money. They need it badly. We've seen in the hinterland. We're working in 4 regions now, the hinterland regions, and it will start on the coast. I think this weekend they may start in region 10 and region 6, and then roll it out along the rest of the coast.
Since we're on that point, Dr. JAGDEO, can you define, a lot of people are asking, I haven't met any of the technical persons, can you define what a household means
now
with the cash grant?
Yes, with the house, we know we always have a problem when you give money to people. You have a number of people all across Ghana who try to collect more than they should. So they make up things. You go to a house and they say 5 families live here, and in reality it's 1. So we have to put in place a system to account for this money. The Auditor General is looking at it. So we are going to give 25,000 to a household, defined as 1 house. So when you can count the number of houses physically, like when we went to an Amerindian village, we say there are 164 houses here, so it's 164 grants. But we know that there are some households or houses where you have more than 1 family would live there. So we have a pink form that they fill up now. So you get 25,000 per house. the principal occupant. And then they are filling up the pink forms. So we will then come back and look at all the pink forms and verify that there are these additional families. And then we will sort them out. We will give them the grant.
Okay, because for instance, when I used to live in South, I used to live upstairs. There were 2 tenants downstairs, and they're individual families.
So we know that, but if you start off in the first round, we will get all the money would be distributed in only one area, because everybody would say, 10 persons in the family, I'm heading the household, I'm heading the household.
So there are things in place to ensure everybody gets it, just in stages.
But in stages. So we want to first of all get the bulk of it out, and where it is in an auditable form, you can audit it, and it's easy to do. So if this village only has 600 houses, and you can't tell me like at the beginning, the people who are going out, we distributed 700, because how come you only have 600 houses?
600 houses, and then we move for the pink forms.
So when we finish off the 600 houses, we have the pink forms. We're coming down back village by village and saying, house number 3, to Critic said he has 3 tenants, but let's find out a bit more whether they're actually 3 households. Let me see, you're paying electricity, your water bill, you're working differently, let's check it a little bit more, and then you get yours.
Okay. I sought the advice of some legal luminaries recently.
Yes, on the COVID issue too, you heard what I said about personal responsibility, people being careful about isolating the elderly and stuff. And so I want to urge people, we're doing a lot of outreach, soft enforcement campaigning for people to wear masks. The ministers are out, the army is out, handing out flyers. And I want people not to let up, because I've seen enormous amounts of people out without masks. There are people hosting private parties, etc. If you get it, you're putting your own life and your family at risk. Not that you can, people who are not observing protocol don't get it too, because you can get it almost anyhow. But please don't put people at risk in your home. And we may have a spike, so we are looking at this. Just today, Frank Anthony told me that he has received today another 26 ventilators. Now, they had 4 before we got into office, and the 4 they were using, he told me, were mainly for mobile things like in ambulances and stuff. Then we added another 5, so we had 9, and now today he received 26 more ventilators. Not that we want people to go on ventilators, but we are hoping we can build greater capacity just in case we have spikes and stuff, because you do get spikes if people get more of the disease and the stuff and things like that. Then the airport, how it's going, the protocol for opening up the airport. So anybody who boards the plane must be tested. And if they're tested and their test is 3 days, they is like 3 days or less, then they get to clear immigration. If it's more than 3 days, you have to redo the test here.
What happens to those individuals who've been tested, reach the criteria, doesn't have, show that they're negative, and they come together? Will they be asked to stay in for a certain period of time?
No, but 3 days you get to go, right? Then beyond 3 days, if you did a test and it's say 6 days old, you have to redo anything above 3 days, would have to redo the test at the airport. And from what they told me, that a private lab would be contracted to do the test here, and the turnaround will be 4 hours. So they may have to wait or so for 4 hours to get the test.
That's leaving Guyana?
No, coming in.
That is coming
into Guyana.
Okay.
Leaving Guyana, I think different countries have different requirements. So depending on the country, you'd have to fulfill that requirement. I don't think you have to be tested going into the US.
Are our international airports, CJIA and Eugene Carra International Airport ready for this?
Yes, up to today, I talk about this. The greatest issue is that the protocols have been established. It's just that the testing now, for those who have a PCR test that is 3 days and older, and then they would have to redo the test. And so that, and I think they're contracting a private group to do this. I gather it's some Eureka.
Recently, Dr. JAGDEO, I have sought the advice of some legal
and also he told me that they have an extractor they got today, not an extractor, so they've had some issues with staffing, but they'll be able to increase the numbers once it's deployed, the number of tests being done per day. So hopefully we keep building the capability. We're talking like crazy to everybody. We're hoping, we saw even now that there is a great optimism that the vaccine could be available before the end of the year. We're hoping, really hoping that happens. If that happens, we want to be in the front row. We're talking to everybody to get, once it's a safe vaccine, to vaccinate our people, so we can resume life as we knew it once.
I see you're very adamant about the COVID-19, and when I said legal luminaries,
No. I don't have a problem with coming to legal luminaries, but I just want to send out the message again. Yes,
good.
That people,
Much
if you have a private party, just be careful. But it's not, don't bring a ton of people over, and then everybody keeps thinking they're safe.
Just stick to the COVID-19 guidelines.
Exactly. And if people think they're safe, but a guy might just be going down the road and catch it, and he comes to the party, he may not even know that he has it. And that's how it gets spread. And then you go home, you take it to the family and stuff. It's not a death sentence. You can't kill people for contracting the thing because it's a pandemic. It's like the flu. But please know that if people act irresponsibly, when you have a spike, the capability of the testing system and the hospital is pushed to the limit. And so we ask for personal responsibility too.
Fair, Dr. JAGDEO. Now my question is, I have sought the advice of some lawyers, and I've been constantly looking on a way forward that would see a more mature politics in this country. But it is obvious, if there's wrongdoing, these issues need to be addressed. Has this administration looked at the possibility of reaching out to the International Criminal Court to deal with some of the acts that are carried out by the opposition?
So if laws could just determine more mature politics, I'm all in favor of passing the law, any law. But I think you had a different angle to it, not enacting local law, because we did have a constitution that the people of this country support, which says we're a democratic country, and which is the primary law of Guyana. The primary law. Everything else is derived from the Constitution, all of our rights, etc. And you had a criminal bunch who toyed with the Constitution, who made fun of it, who didn't respect it, altered its interpretation, totally ignored rulings of the court based on the Constitution. So there is a case. You just raised an issue with me about the International Criminal Court. And there is a strong case made. And I think if for an approach to external bodies. And that case is strengthened and exemplified by the CCJ, our resort to the CCJ. Because had we not had external recourse, had I not taken Guyana into the Caribbean Court of Justice in the early 2000s, and the final court was our Court of Appeal, then I shudder to think, with the criminal bunch that was in office the last 5 years, what would have happened to this country. We'd never been able to get them out. And so I agree with you that we have to explore extensively. We're a member of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. We have to explore extensively recourse to external bodies for acts that are criminal in nature and that qualify to be prosecuted in those courts. So, including the International Criminal Court. Now, you saw also that when we had the incident in West Coast Buggies, we said that we want to bring to the attention of the United Nations some of these acts that we consider are racist and designed to stir up ethnic enmity among our people. Our people have lived well together for years, for centuries. They have lived well together. And there are some who will see us divided in a manner that is a brutal manner along ethnic lines for their own political survival or political gain. And we have to fight that at every cost, using every single tool and all the resources of the state. And we need people to support that. Because our future is together, all the people of this country. And we have a bright future together, every single group, regardless of your politics. But there are few people who just for their selfish thing. And so we have to explore. This is what happened in places like Rwanda, where the population was practically ethnically the Africans, but from different tribes. Look at what happened in Rwanda and the role of the United Nations in Rwanda in prosecuting those people. They led to genocide because of dehumanizing people. And when you listen to a Shara Duncan or a Rickford Burke or the others, or a Benchko, that's all they do. They dehumanize people. You know, so I'm wishing everybody in the country well, excepting you. You should die. You should get the COVID and die. That kind of language. This is a bunch of mad people with a design. And you see it replicated in senior leadership of ACNUM. Somehow they have to be called, they must be doing illegal things. And they must be called to account. And we will explore every external mean, including the International Criminal Court, to prevent that from happening, prevent it from happening. And so this, what happened there, it's not over with, because we have, look at what goes on the internet with some people. There must be consequences though to you, anybody, regardless of your race, Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, PPP, ACNUM, anybody who goes online to try to stir up ethnic hate among our people must face the consequences. Must. If we want to be a civilized, progressive society, we all must want that. It mustn't become a political issue. It must become a national issue. And so, yes, exploring the ICC for some people might be an option.
On that note, Dr. JAGDEO, I want to thank you for this interview. It's always interesting having these one-on-ones with you, and I'm hoping we could do this.
Just on the matter of the police too, I think you've been a bit harsh on Robson Ben, a little bit harsh on my colleague. You know, Robson, I gather you had some programs. Robson is right now stuck with tons of things he's working on. And you know, he might not be the most media friendly person, but he works very hard. He's a hard working minister and individual. I know he's looking at prison reform. You know, people are living like animals at Lusignan. We have to find a proper place to accommodate them. He had this issue with a number of people in the prison, over 200 contracted COVID, having to move them. We have this prison that is, the costs have escalated at Mazaruni. They're bringing in steel containers. We have to fix that. And the police don't have vehicles to move around. We have to fix that, you know. Then you have a ton of issues. He's dealing with admin issues, etc. at the same time. So I know that a lot of people feel the same way you did, particularly about the Region 5 incident, that the police should have acted with greater sense of resoluteness and to protect people. And in some cases they did not. But sometimes it's not all the minister.
You are aware, although the dynamics behind the scenes differ, and if a minister is not open with the media, they wouldn't know.
Yeah, sure.
So you're explaining that now, but you are aware a lot rides on the people's sense of feeling secure under the administration for 2025.
I agree with you absolutely on that. This government has to spend a lot on security in a smart manner. We have to keep our people safe in their homes, that the businessmen feeling confident. We can do that two methods. I'm all for two. Harsh, uncompromising, hardcore police action against criminality, and two, making sure that we have a soft approach to where the young kids and all of the others who don't have jobs and have to, you know, like where they feel desperate, we have to work with them, find them things to do, to work with communities, work with the leaders, work with the religious communities, with the religious leaders, and making sure that our kids can get educated, they have the right guidance, they can find a job, so they're not tempted to go in the criminal path. So I'm all in favor of that, and I agree with you absolutely that it is often a political issue. It is a political issue.
I want to thank you for explaining on that, Dr. JAGDEO, because I myself have some ideas about with policing group what should be done, and a flow of ideas, a plethora of ideas are coming in my direction that I will share, and I share from time to time with the relevant ministries and so on. So again, I want to thank you for this interview.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. The Guyanese Critic with Vice President Dr. JAGDEO on current affairs. Thank you.